My name is Ed Verner. I'm the founding donor and the president of the Plant City Photo Archives, originally founded in the year 2000. This video is meant to be a historical perspective and recollection of significant events regarding what we've been able to accomplish. Recently, I was working to answer an important question about the Plant City Photo Archives as part of some committee work there, and I had to dig back into the past a little bit to find an answer. I found myself reviewing all of my personal memos and files regarding this thing, going all the way back to the beginning. I eventually found the answer I was looking for, but so too, I was struck anew and impressed by what has emerged from very humble beginnings. We've been so busy saving other people's history, we almost forgot to preserve our own. So what have we done? I'm going to try to cover about 16 years worth of activity as fast as I can. So let's get cracking, shall we? How did this whole thing start? Well, first off, you need to know that Plant City had two main professional photographers during that age that starts with indoor plumbing and ends with cell phones, and namely Bill Friend. He was an Army-trained photographer during World War II who came home and kept at it as a career. And Gladys Jeffcoat. She was a feisty Amelia Earhart type, but self-taught and very professional. Both of these had long careers in Plant City and amassed a large collection of photographs taken for commercial businesses, newspapers, the Chamber of Commerce, schools, etc. When Bill Friend died, his widow, Virginia, contacted me wanting to sell her husband's life's work. She knew of my passion for photographs since I had purchased pictures from Gladys and Bill and the East Hillsborough Historical Society 2 years prior for display and decoration in the hallways of the Lee Building. And while certainly not the first, because the Whistle Stop and the Wells buildings preceded, the Lee Building photo hallways with over 300 framed pictures had impressed Virginia. She liked how they had increased awareness of Plant City's photo heritage. Now at that time, I was finishing my second term as president of the East Hillsborough Historical Society, and I struggled with the board there for 6 months, urging them to make the purchase. But they would not. I offered to pay for it and to donate it, but by then worries had arisen on several issues, namely the precedent of not spending money for donations, copyright law, the uncertainty of value, and of course upsetting Gladys as regards the future of her photos. At that time, they also did not want to narrow down their focus to photographs with so many other issues and projects underway. When you have an opportunity no one else will take, plus a clear unmet need in the community, to me that equals a new venture. I bought the photo collection from Virginia for $5,000 and I donated it to a newly created nonprofit entity that would have historic photography as its core focus, rather than relegating them to join a small collection in a 25-year-old untouched file cabinet. And so it began. 5 file boxes, 2 cardboard storage boxes, 1 open box, a few loose baggies, and a solitary tube were all that remained. What in the world do we do now? Well, first off, we open the boxes. And folks, you can pack a whole lot of pictures into a small space as long as you don't want them organized. And of course, there were more negatives than prints, so just looking at them can make you cross-eyed. Gil Gott and Betty Patton began investigating. What have other people done? They began researching the type of scanner we might need, which in 2000, scanning negatives was very new territory. Keep in mind, folks, how most people still were using faxes at that time. Computers were not then what they are today, and most photography collections were still reproducing from negatives. When I bought a single photo of the Lee Building from the Burgert Brothers collection in Tampa in 1998, it required my driving to Tampa, a 14-day delay, and nearly $500 to get 2 photo enlargements. Clearly, the heritage photo world would have to move into the computer age, and we needed computers, scanners, and some money to buy them. Historic pictures of the Plant City's past, displayed in the downtown, at the Whistle Stop Cafe, the Lee Building, and elsewhere, set the stage for our selling some photos to adorn the upstairs hallways of the new City Hall under construction. We rifled through our boxes and scrounged up enough to sell 50 framed pictures, and we barely cleared enough money to buy some computer equipment. One brief sidebar here for you to appreciate is how digital scanning is not only cheaper and more transportable than photography, but it also allows for restoration of things beyond what the human eye can see. Our director, Bill Thomas, tells me that the human eye can distinguish 32 shades between black and white, whereas a computer can see 256. We will come back to this in a second. So we had computers and volunteers, and we had a little hovel to work in, and Betty got serious about scanning what we had, and Gil got serious about developing systems to organize it all. Within 2 years of getting 7 boxes, we had scanned thousands of pictures, and we began reaching out to concerned donors and community leaders for help and guidance. We created an advisory council and we generated a historic Plant City calendar for the upcoming year and developed a brochure to include with our first public mailing. 400 copies of our letter and brochure went out that fall, and pretty quickly our volunteer base rose. We started collating the stories behind the pictures, inviting those concerned to attend screenings of pictures we needed help identifying. This Geezer Committee gave us context and information and also sometimes incredible donations of photographs. So now back to the picture of the lady in the wagon. With research, we were able to learn who and what she was. So we were able to save not only the picture, but a slice of Plant City's past that surely was on the brink of extinction. But saving history in a small upstairs hovel with a few people enjoying it was not enough. We needed to get our pictures and our exhibits into the public eye and into the public heart. Since we had no place to display or make exhibits, the Advisory Council, and particularly Stanley and Susan Colker, together with Linda Smith and many others, moved us towards having an annual event to showcase these pictures around themes. An evening of picture-perfect memories and soiree was born in 2003. Eventually it grew to include biographies of prominent champions of historical work in our town, with our Heritage Award and our Paralini Award. So far, our soirees have entertained over 1,700 people and recognized over 25 beloved citizens for distinguished service to history and heritage work in Plant City. After our first soiree in 2003, community interest and involvement in our operations rose. Partial exhibits were now visible on loan in several public places, such as the local library and bank lobbies. We also received an award from the city's Historic Resources Board, and all the while, Betty and volunteers were still scanning photos at a fabulous rate. Approximately 40,000 scanned images by the end of 2004, after only 3.5 years of operation. To put that number into perspective, you all remember the photo book The Best of Life. Well, if you printed our 40,000 images into picture book size and mounted them on a wall 8 feet high, after 3.5 years' work, how far do you think that wall would go? Here is an aerial of Plant City and I-4 showing Wheeler Street on the right, and that crooked road on the left is Thanota Sassa. In just 3.5 years, we could have made a wall, and you could get on the interstate at Wheeler Street and drive back to the Starbucks exit. Then after buying your overpriced sugar candy coffee, you could get back on the interstate, drive back, and look at the back side of the same wall. In 2005, the 60th anniversary of Allied victory in World War II was coming, and Gil and Betty responded to a suggestion from the Advisory Council to make a special exhibit of Plant City veterans. This idea quickly grew beyond any of our hopes. While Gil and I went on the Civic Club speaking tour again, soliciting for help and photographs and money to run with it, the Veterans exhibit exploded into our taking the leap into renting a larger space. For the first time, we would have a dedicated exhibit hall, and our first exhibit there would be honoring over 500 local veterans with over 1,000 pictures. It was a huge joy and success, and our new location gave us growing pains, but strength in overcoming them. Another offshoot of the development of our Salute to Veterans exhibit was the idea of Plant City having a Veterans Park. Stanley Colker and Gil Gott asked, quote, "Other towns have one, why not Plant City?" End quote. Quickly after that first meeting with city officials and concerned citizens in 2005, it became apparent how such a project would need to be a separate mission, and so began Plant City Armed Forces Memorials Foundation Incorporated. The originally approved, simple idea of a small statue turned into a 4-year project covering a newly renovated park with a much bigger footprint and a gargantuan budget. We were honored to be involved and persevere throughout until the completed park was eventually dedicated. Collaborating with others, like the Veterans Foundation, remained a hallmark of our operation, and by 2006 soiree, we had worked with many groups, such as the Lakeland Imperial Symphony Orchestra, Chamber Ensemble, documentary filmmakers, local civic clubs, art clubs, and more. We were proud to be honored by the Plant City Chamber of Commerce with a special business award in the fall of 2006, in large part for our ongoing contributions in Gil Gott's many published articles featuring our photographs and history work. In addition, our rapidly growing webpage, featuring access to exhibit photos and articles, was making great strides. In the Field magazine, Focus magazine, and local newspaper articles published gave the impetus and backbone to Gil's book, Remembering Plant City, Tales from the Winter Strawberry Capital of the World. It was published in 2007. This book featured thorough articles of history involving over 40 topics, and it included collaborations with the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and outreach to every concerned party on each topic. Put simply, this book was not written in secret. Now recall with me how we started off speaking of two iconic Plant City photographers, and how I had purchased many photos from Gladys Jeffcoat during our decorating of the Lee Building in 1998. She had worked with the Plant City Photo Archives many times since our humble beginnings and appreciated us for focusing on photography. However, she also maintained a camera exhibit at the 1914 high school, and with fierce independence and grit, she continued to attempt to organize her photos at her lake house in her spare time and on her own. As the years went by, I remember asking her how many of her negatives had she scanned, and her sideways glance at me. And then I would say, "Keep at it, Gladys. We've only done a few thousand since the last time I asked you." Despite declining several previous attempts by us to purchase her collection of photos, in 2008, Ms. Jeffcoat was at last ready to make it official. She sold to us for upwards of $17,000 in change, not only her photographs and her camera exhibit on loan to the EHHS, but she also contracted with us to work in Plant City in attempting to collate and organize it all. Off and on for nearly 4 years, she worked in our Jeffcoat Collection Annex as best as her health and vitality would allow, and she received our Heritage Award in 2009. Here you can see her presenting it to Jim Jones in 2010. Unfortunately, during 2011, her health began to decline, and sadly, she died in early 2012. Shortly after Gladys brought her pictures to us in 2008, the Plant City Photo Archives received its largest donation so far from Dr. John and Sally Werner, namely a permanent home with an exhibit hall nearly twice again as large as our previous one. Along with more space came a very important addition to the ability at last to have a dedicated backroom operations center. Our larger venue now accommodated on-site events, including our own black tie soiree, and increased our exposure. Collaborations grew and even crossed state lines, as seen here with our Candy Owens working with a Washington Post writer. Cross-promotions such as a photography contest featuring the Florida Strawberry Festival Parade and a photojournalism contest were initiated by great volunteers like Cassandra Banning and Mikey Snyder, helping to reach younger minds with the impact and importance of history. In May of 2012, the Plant City Photo Archives Incorporated was honored to host the first of only a handful of stops in the state of Florida of the Journey Stories exhibit, on tour from the Smithsonian Institution. Over that summer, thousands of visitors made their way to Plant City to visit us, and cross-promotion with history departments at HCC created new journey stories to contribute to future exhibits as it traveled the nation. Also in 2012, and then repeated several times since then, the Photo Archives has collaborated with the City of Plant City and Hillsborough County to sponsor the Plant City Sculptures exhibit. When I started out just trying to find an answer to a rather simple question, and I wound up reviewing the entire history of our organization, I felt quite proud to work with such great people who are open and friendly and passionate about Plant City's community and history. The retrospective about where it all started and just what did we say we would do compared to what we have done calls to mind that phrase, "The proof of the pudding is in the tasting." As it says, we wanted to promote a richer and fuller understanding. Of course, we wanted to save the pictures, find their stories, work with anybody who could help us or be served by us. We've collaborated with news organizations and companies across the nation and outside the United States, from CNN to local funeral homes needing photographs for eulogies. Reach out to involve this community, educate the young, embrace the digital age. In a nutshell, we wanted to see and remember. Really, if there are 3 things I have learned and want to have you wrap your mind around regarding the Plant City Photo Archives, well, here they are. Number 1, most, and by that I mean nearly all, efforts like ours are affiliated with governmental or educational institutions, and they get support from them. Support like money. As a freestanding effort so far, we are unique. And perhaps it is partly because we have not been directed by a government or a university that this next thing is so true. We were too naive to be afraid of the impossible. And the second thing, therefore, is the size and scope of what we have done is astounding. When Gil and Betty went to the Eastman House in the museum operated by Kodak in New York around 2004, those folks up there were very proud of their 14,000 scanned images, and only 300 of them were available to view. Folks, we're talking about Kodak, a huge corporation focused on nothing but photography. And they, like many, they subcontract their scans. With us, the people scanning are people who care about the topic, and that saves us another step in that we can add keywords and searchability to our files as we're scanning them. When Gil and Betty went to the State of Indiana Museum in 2010, the State of Indiana Museum, those folks were really proud of their 40,000 images. Burgert Brothers in Tampa has 15,000. With the Friend and the Jeffcoat collections, plus donated images, we are already well beyond 80,000 scanned images, and tens of thousands are still ahead of us, awaiting time, money, and effort. That wall I spoke of before, that would show the pictures on an 8-foot-high wall, well, today, it would run around Lake Hollingsworth and Lakeland 4 times. Or put another way, if you went to work full-time at our computers browsing our digital files, it would take you nearly 2 months to see them all. But if you come by or if you call, we can search them because we have keywords. It took us over a decade to digitally attach to these photos, and truly astounding things happen sometimes. Folks, I challenge you. If you really like old pictures and you like looking at the history of Plant City, don't come to the photo archives because you're going to be sucked in. It's amazing what they can show you. The third thing I'd like you to keep in mind is I've learned the 2 key investments when making an effort like this, the best bang for your buck, if you will, are digitization and synergistic communication. And what that really means is we focus as much as we can on computerization and on having people who are open and caring and eager to reach out and communicate. Put simply, the best investment we can make is to always be nice. And that sometimes is a difficult thing to accomplish in the heritage and history world. There's a lot of mean people who don't smile much in that world. Synergy helps us capture the history, of course, but so too we strive to be friendly and generous with it. Here's just a small look at some of the people towards whom it has been our pleasure to be nice. A good example of our attitude is the more than 50 sudden jobs we've been honored to rush in helping families or local funeral homes prepare for unexpected eulogies. And another is how recently a reporter for the Courier reached out to Gil for help in researching the history of his own organization. Well, Gil had already written a 4-part history series on the history of newspapers in Plant City, and it was nice that they asked, and we were happy to serve. Our attitude is generally that we don't want to deny anyone a picture they need by trying to sell it to them for what it truly costs. Rather, we think it is easier and better to ask everyone who wants to see and remember to help us in whatever way they can, so that we can be as responsive as possible to those with a passionate need. So often organizations try to raise money with a dream and the attitude of, give us the money and we will prove ourselves to you eventually. But not all dreams have a successful outcome. I hope that in our years so far, you can agree with me how we have already done it. And instead our pitch is a little different. We say, give us your donations so we can keep doing what we have been doing. It is important work, and Plant City deserves to be remembered in her photographs.